The quiet hum of the space station was the only sound in the room. The lights were dim and the air felt cold as usual. The human, a young engineer named Jack, lived alone. His work on the station was important, but it was also lonely. Most of the other crew members were busy with their own tasks, and Jack preferred it that way. He liked the solitude. One night, after a long day of fixing broken equipment, Jack lay in his bed, staring up at the ceiling. The station was mostly silent, except for the occasional beep of the machines. He was exhausted, but sleep didn't come easily. His mind raced with thoughts of his work, his future, and the strange quietness of space. As Jack began to drift off, he heard something. A soft, rustling sound, almost like the sound of sheets moving. He blinked and sat up, rubbing his eyes. The room was dark and nothing seemed out of place, but then he felt it. A weight on the bed beside him. It was as if someone had just sat down, though he was sure he was alone. His heart began to race. He quickly reached for the light switch, but before he could, he felt something, or someone, press against him. A voice whispered softly in his ear, "Son, I need your warmth." Jack froze. The voice was soft, yet it carried a strange sense of urgency. It was unlike anything he had heard before. He quickly turned, his eyes adjusting to the darkness, and saw a figure sitting on the edge of the bed. The person's features were blurred, but there was something almost glowing about them. "Who are you?" Jack asked, his voice shaky. His hand instinctively reached for the control panel beside the bed, ready to call for help. But before he could speak again, the figure moved closer. He could feel her body heat, a warmth that seemed almost too much for his skin to handle in the cold room. The figure was a woman, tall, with long, dark hair that shimmered in the dim light. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her eyes were an unusual shade of violet. "I need your warmth," she repeated, her voice almost pleading. Jack stared at her, unable to speak. His mind raced. Who was this woman? How had she gotten into his room? And why was she asking for warmth? "Where are you from?" he finally asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and curiosity. The woman paused, her eyes locking with his. "I come from a place far from here, a place where cold is all we know." She hesitated for a moment, then added, "My species, we cannot survive without warmth. We are born into the cold, and we die without the heat of another." Jack didn't know what to say. He had heard of other species in the galaxy, but this was the first time he had encountered someone so different. The idea that a person could die from cold was strange, almost incomprehensible. "Why me?" he asked, feeling both confused and intrigued. "Why did you come to me?" The woman looked down at her hands for a moment, then back at Jack. "I have no choice. Your warmth is the only thing that can keep me alive." Jack felt a strange tug in his chest. There was something deeply genuine in her eyes, something that told him she wasn't lying. She wasn't here to harm him. She was simply in need, just like anyone else. "Okay," Jack said, his voice softer now. "I'll help you." The woman smiled faintly, and Jack noticed the relief in her expression. She moved closer, her body pressing gently against his. Despite his initial fear, Jack felt an odd sense of calm. The warmth she radiated wasn't uncomfortable. It was soothing, as if it was exactly what he needed. For the first time in a long while, Jack didn't feel so alone. The warmth of the strange woman next to Jack was comforting, but it also left him with more questions. His mind raced, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this encounter than he understood. The woman, who had introduced herself as Elira, looked up at him, her violet eyes full of gratitude. She had been silent for a few moments, simply resting against him as if drawing strength from his warmth. Jack could feel her body trembling, though not from cold. It was as if her very being was in distress. "I need to tell you something," Elira whispered, her voice soft but filled with urgency. "My people, we are born into cold. We are from a planet where warmth is rare. Only those who find a bond with another species can survive. Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. He had known that space was full of strange beings, but the idea that someone could not live without the heat of another being was something completely new. I don't understand, Jack said, his voice barely a whisper. How does that work? How did you even get here? Elira took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling slowly. I am here on a mission. My people need an alliance with yours, but I'm not well. Her voice faltered for a moment. Without warmth, I will die. I've been unable to find anyone who can help me until now. Jack was taken aback. He hadn't been expecting this. He had thought maybe she was just some stranded traveler, or maybe she had some strange need for warmth that didn't involve life or death. But this was different. Her entire species was dependent on something as simple as human warmth. I don't know what to say, Jack muttered. He didn't understand how something as simple as sharing body heat could be so critical. It sounded unbelievable. Yet Elira's pleading expression made him feel like he had no choice but to help. Elira looked down, her face softening. You don't have to say anything. I just need you to stay with me to keep me warm. She paused, looking up at him with a mixture of hope and sadness. The cold is always with me, even when I am not near it. My body, it can't survive. Without warmth, I've learned to keep it under control, but without someone to help me, it becomes too much. Jack could feel a growing sense of responsibility inside him. He had never imagined that something like this could happen to him, that an alien being would come to him in such a vulnerable state. But as he looked at her, he realized that there was no one else. He was the only person who could help her now. And somehow, that thought made him feel both important and scared at the same time. He nodded, though still unsure. All right, Elira. I'll help you. I don't fully understand what's going on, but I won't leave you alone. Elira smiled faintly, her eyes filled with relief. Thank you, Jack. You don't know how much this means to me. The silence between them felt different now. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy with the weight of what had been shared. Jack wasn't sure if he was doing the right thing, but he knew that he couldn't turn his back on her. She needed him. And maybe, just maybe, he needed her, too. Later that night, the warmth of her body against his felt both comforting and strange. They were lying close together in the bed, the coldness of the room making it necessary for them to be this close. Jack wasn't sure how much time had passed, but he knew that the longer they stayed together, the more his feelings for her would grow. He had never felt this kind of connection with anyone before. It was as if her presence, her need for warmth, was pulling something out of him that he didn't know existed. How long have you been without warmth? Jack asked quietly, not wanting to break the fragile bond they had created. Elira shifted slightly, her face softening. For most of my life, she admitted. I was born in the coldest parts of my planet. Our species evolved to survive in harsh conditions, but we cannot live without warmth. We are like fire, always needing fuel. Jack thought about what she had said. Her words struck him deeply. He had always taken warmth for granted, but now, in the silence of the night, he began to understand just how essential it was to her survival. I don't know if I can keep doing this, Jack confessed, though the words felt strange coming from his mouth. I don't know what's going to happen to you or to me, but I will try my best to help. Elira turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his. I don't ask for much, Jack. Just stay with me and I will be all right. You don't have to do anything more than that. Jack nodded slowly. He didn't know how long he could keep this up, but he knew he had no choice but to try. They both needed something from each other, something that went beyond warmth. It was an unspoken connection, a bond that was hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. I'll be here, he said, his voice steady now. I won't leave you. And for the first time since they had met, Jack felt at peace. There was still much to learn, many questions to answer, but for now, he was exactly where he needed to be. The days that followed were filled with an odd sense of normalcy. Despite the strange circumstances, Jack's life, which had once been predictable and routine, was now intertwined with Elira's. She spent more time in his quarters, lying beside him at night, her body seeking his warmth. At first, Jack was unsure how to feel about it. He had never shared such an intimate space with someone he had just met. But over time, he began to accept it as part of their reality. The cold, mechanical world of the space station felt distant, now. Whenever Elira was near, the chill of the station seemed to fade away. Her warmth was unlike anything Jack had ever experienced, but it was more than just physical. There was something about her presence that made everything feel alive, as if she carried a spark inside her that could light up even the darkest corners of the station. They spent hours talking about their worlds, their cultures, their hopes. Jack learned that Elira's species, the Trilon, had evolved on a planet with temperatures so low that even the hardiest of plants couldn't grow. The Trilon had adapted by becoming cold-blooded, unable to produce their own heat. As a result, they were dependent on others for survival. Jack couldn't fully understand it, but he could see the pain in Elira's eyes when she spoke of her people's struggles. "I've never known warmth like this," Elira had told him one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've always had to keep my emotions hidden to stay strong. But with you, I can feel something I've never felt before. I feel safe." Jack didn't know what to say. The idea that someone could feel safe just by being close to him was both humbling and overwhelming. He had always considered himself just a regular guy, someone who fixed things and went about his business. But with Elira, he felt like he was part of something much bigger. One evening, as they sat in the small lounge area of the station, Jack looked at her, a question on his mind. "Do you ever miss your home?" he asked. Elira's eyes darkened for a moment and she looked away, as if the question had touched a place she didn't want to visit. "I do," she admitted softly. "My people are out there somewhere. I'm supposed to help them to bring our two species together. But I don't know if they'll accept me anymore. I left my planet because I was chosen to lead, to create a future where my people could survive. But it's hard, Jack. It's so hard." Jack reached out, placing his hand over hers. He didn't know what to say, but he could feel the weight of her words. She wasn't just an alien from another world. She was someone who had sacrificed everything for her people, someone who carried the burden of her entire species on her shoulders. "You're not alone, Elira," Jack said quietly. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Elira's gaze softened as she looked at him, her violet eyes searching his face. "But I am alone," she replied, her voice barely audible. "I've always been alone, even when I was surrounded by my people. They don't understand. They can't understand what it's like to need someone else's warmth to survive." Jack squeezed her hand, feeling an unexpected connection grow between them. It wasn't just about sharing warmth anymore. It was about something deeper, something that neither of them had anticipated when they first met. The more time they spent together, the more Jack realized that his feelings for Elira were changing. He had started by feeling sorry for her, then moved on to a sense of responsibility. But now there was something more, something that went beyond pity or duty. He found himself wanting to protect her, to make sure she never felt alone again. One night, after a long day of repairs and quiet conversation, Elira rested her head on Jack's chest as they lay together in bed. The station was silent, save for the hum of the engines and the occasional beep of the consoles. Jack's heart beat steadily, but his mind was filled with thoughts of Elira, her vulnerability, and her strength. "I've never been this close to someone," Jack murmured, his voice almost lost in the stillness of the room. Elira's voice was soft in the darkness. "I've never allowed myself to get close to anyone. My people don't believe in close bonds like humans do. We're taught to be independent, to rely on ourselves. But with you, I feel something I can't explain." Jack shifted slightly, tilting his head to look down at her. "What do you feel?" Elira's eyes met his, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the station's lights. "I feel warmth, not just from your body but from your heart. It's more than I ever imagined." Jack's chest tightened at her words. He had never considered himself a particularly warm person, but now as he lay beside her, he realized that maybe warmth wasn't just physical. Maybe it was something that came from within, something that could be shared without words. "I'll always be here for you," Jack said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know what the future holds, but I won't leave you. You're not alone anymore." Elira's eyes glistened and she smiled, a small but genuine smile that made Jack's heart swell. "Thank you, Jack. I don't know how to repay you for everything you've done." "You don't have to," Jack replied, his hand gently brushing her hair away from her face. "You don't need to repay me. You're not a burden. You're a part of my life now." In that moment, something inside Jack shifted. He realized that what he was offering wasn't just warmth, it was something much more profound. It was companionship. It was love, in a way he hadn't expected. And though the future remained uncertain, Jack knew one thing for sure. He would stand by Elira no matter what. Days turned into weeks, and as time passed, Jack and Elira's bond grew stronger. The warmth they shared was no longer just about survival. It had become something far more important. They had found comfort in each other's presence, a connection neither of them had expected. But even as their relationship deepened, the reality of Elira's mission still loomed over them like a shadow. One day, as Jack was finishing up a routine check of the station systems, Elira entered the room, her expression more serious than usual. He immediately noticed the change in her demeanor. There was a tension in the air, an unspoken worry that seemed to hang between them. "Elira?" Jack called out, setting down the tool he was holding. "What's wrong?" Elira hesitated, her gaze falling to the floor before meeting his eyes. "I received a message," she said quietly. "From my people. They want me to return. They say they need me to complete the alliance negotiations, but I can't go back like this." Jack's heart sank. He knew this day would come, eventually, but hearing the words spoken aloud made it feel real. Elira had been sent to secure an alliance between her people and the humans, but she had become so much more than just a diplomat. She had become someone Jack cared for deeply, someone he didn't want to lose. "You don't have to go back," Jack said quickly, stepping closer to her. "You can stay here with me." Elira looked at him, her eyes filled with conflict. "I wish I could, Jack. But if I don't go back, my people will suffer. The alliance is our only hope for survival. Without it, my planet will continue to struggle and many will die." Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew she was right. Her mission was important not just for her people, but for the future of her entire species. Yet the thought of her leaving, of losing her, made his chest ache. "You can't keep putting your people's needs above your own, Elira," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've sacrificed so much already. You don't have to carry the weight of the galaxy on your shoulders." Elira shook her head, a look of sadness crossing her face. "It's not that simple. My people are counting on me. If I fail them, there will be consequences, terrible consequences. I don't have a choice." The silence that followed was heavy, both of them lost in their thoughts. Jack understood her duty, but that didn't make it any easier. He cared about her, more than he had ever cared for anyone. And now, he was faced with the reality that she might leave, returning to a life he could never be a part of. "I don't want you to go," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elira stepped closer to him, her expression softening. "I don't want to leave you either, Jack. But this isn't just about us, it's about my people and it's about the future. I can't abandon them, not now." Jack felt the weight of her words, and for a moment he thought he might break. He had always been a practical person, focused on the tasks at hand. But now, as he stood facing Elira, he realized that his feelings for her had changed everything. He wasn't just helping her survive. He had fallen in love with her. "I understand," Jack said finally, though the words tasted bitter on his tongue. "But I'll be here, Elira. Whatever happens, I won't forget you. I'll never forget what you've done for me." Elira's eyes glistened, and she reached out to touch his cheek. "Thank you, Jack. You've given me more than I could have ever asked for. Your warmth, your kindness, I will carry it with me, no matter where I go. The thought of her leaving still felt unbearable. But Jack knew that this was something neither of them could control. They were from different worlds with different duties and responsibilities. And while their connection was deep and real, sometimes life demanded sacrifices. As the days passed, the tension between them only grew. Jack tried to push aside his fear, focusing on helping Elira prepare for the journey back to her people. But every time he looked at her, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away. Then, one evening, as they sat together in the lounge, Elira turned to him with a serious expression on her face. "Jack, I need to ask you something." "What is it?" Jack replied, his heart beating faster as he wondered what she was about to say. Elira hesitated, her eyes searching his face. "If I go back, if I fulfill my mission and return to my people, would you be willing to come with me?" Jack blinked in surprise. "Come with you? But I'm human. My place is here, with my people. I don't belong with your kind." Elira reached out, taking his hand in hers. "You may be human, but your heart is unlike anyone I've ever met. You've shown me more warmth than anyone ever has. I know it would be difficult, but I can't do this without you, Jack. I need you by my side." Jack looked into her eyes, seeing the desperation and hope there. He had never considered leaving Earth, but now, faced with the possibility of joining Elira in her world, he was torn. It wasn't just a matter of duty, it was about love and whether he was willing to take that leap into the unknown. "I'll think about it," Jack said quietly, squeezing her hand. "But I need time to understand what that means, what it would mean for us." Elira nodded, her expression softening. "Take all the time you need. Just know that I want you by my side, if you can." The weight of their choices hung in the air, both of them unsure of what the future held. But one thing was certain: their journey together was far from over. The following days were filled with preparation. Jack could feel the tension building both within him and in Elira. The decision she had made, to return to her people, was weighing heavily on both of them. Jack tried to focus on his work, but his mind kept drifting back to Elira. Her presence had become so integral to his life that imagining a future without her was almost impossible. One evening, as Jack sat alone in his quarters, he received a message on his console. It was from Elira. "Meet me at the hangar in an hour. There's something important I need to tell you." His heart skipped a beat. He had a sinking feeling that whatever she was about to say would change everything. Jack had known this moment would come. Elira had to make a choice, and whatever that choice was, it would affect both of their lives. An hour later, Jack stood in the hangar, waiting. The large, empty space echoed with his footsteps as he paced back and forth, his thoughts racing. He couldn't stop thinking about the future. Would Elira return to her people? Would she ask him to come with her? Or would she choose to stay behind, despite the consequences? Finally, Elira walked into the hangar. She was dressed in her uniform, her expression more serious than Jack had ever seen it. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Jack could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Elira," Jack said softly, stepping forward. "What's going on? What's so important?" Elira took a deep breath and looked at him. "I've received orders from my people. They want me to return immediately to finalize the alliance, but..." She hesitated, her voice faltering. "There's something I need to tell you before I go." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. He felt like the ground beneath him was shifting. "What is it? You can tell me anything." Elira looked away for a moment, collecting her thoughts. Then she turned back to him, her gaze filled with both resolve and sadness. "Jack, I've spent so much time thinking about my mission, about my people's survival. But in the end, it's not just about them, it's about us. I never expected to feel this way, but I've realized that I can't leave you behind." Jack's breath caught in his throat. "What are you saying, Elira? You can't stay here forever. You have to help your people." I know, Elira said, her voice breaking. But I can't go back and live the way I was before. Not now that I know what it feels like to be close to someone who cares for me. I can't turn my back on what we have. The words hung in the air between them, and Jack stood there unsure of what to say. The decision that Elira was facing was enormous. It wasn't just a matter of returning to her people. It was about everything she had ever known, everything she had been trained to do. To stay with Jack would mean defying her people, possibly even risking everything she had worked for. Elira, you can't stay for me, Jack said, his voice firm. Your people need you. If you don't go, everything you've worked for will be for nothing. Elira's eyes glistened, but she shook her head. I don't know if I can live with that, Jack. I don't know if I can keep going if it means leaving you behind. Jack felt his chest tighten. He had always known she would be torn between her duty and her heart. The pressure was unbearable, and he knew that her decision would define both of their futures. You have to go, Jack said, his voice softer now, filled with regret. I'll always be here for you, but you can't throw away everything for me. Your people are counting on you. Elira reached out, her hand trembling as she touched his. I don't want to leave you. I don't want to lose you, Jack. Don't want to lose you either, Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. But this isn't just about us. It's about your future, about your people. I can't be the reason you give all that up. They stood there in silence, both of them struggling with the weight of the decision that lay ahead. Jack had never felt more torn in his life. He wanted to be with Elira. He wanted to keep her safe, to protect her from the dangers of her mission. But he also knew that he couldn't be selfish. She had a duty to her people, and he could never ask her to abandon that. Elira, Jack said, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. You have to do what's right for you, whatever that is. I'll support you, but don't let me be the reason you sacrifice everything. Elira nodded slowly, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. I don't know what the future holds, Jack, but I know one thing for sure: I'll never forget you. No matter where I go, you'll always be a part of me. And with those words, Elira turned and walked away, leaving Jack standing in the hangar, his heart heavy with the weight of their shared moment. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew that their paths had crossed for a reason. Whether they would stay together or part ways, one thing was certain: their connection was something neither of them could ever forget. The days after Elira left the station were some of the hardest Jack had ever faced. He kept himself busy with his work, but his thoughts were never far from her. He missed the sound of her voice, the warmth she brought with her, and the way she made him feel like he mattered. The station, once a place of routine and calm, now felt empty and cold without her. But Elira had made her choice, and Jack knew it was the right one for her. He had told her to do what was best for her, even if it meant they had to go their separate ways. She had left with the hope that their paths would cross again, but neither of them knew when or how that would happen. Weeks went by, and Jack tried to move forward. He focused on his work, keeping to himself as much as possible. He still thought about Elira every day, but he reminded himself that she was doing something important, something bigger than both of them. One morning, as Jack sat at his console, reviewing data from the station's systems, he received a message. It was from Elira. Jack, I need to see you. I've made my decision. Meet me at the hangar at 1600 hours. It's urgent. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what Elira was planning, but he could sense the seriousness in her message. He had never been one to jump to conclusions, but this felt different. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. When the time came, Jack made his way to the hangar. The station was quiet and the air felt heavier than usual. As he entered the large open space, he saw Elira standing by a small shuttle, her back to him. She was wearing a long coat that billowed slightly in the artificial wind, and she seemed lost in thought. Elira? Jack called softly, unsure if she had heard him. She turned around, her face lighting up when she saw him. Her violet eyes met his, and for a moment, it felt as if time had stopped. It was as if the whole world had disappeared and all that mattered was the two of them standing in the hangar together. Jack, Elira said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about doing what's right for me, about my future and my people. And I've come to a decision. Jack's heart raced. What's your decision? Elira took a deep breath and stepped closer to him. I can't go back, Jack. Not yet. Not until I know for sure that I've done everything I can to help my people. But I can't do that without you. I need you with me. I need your strength, your warmth. Jack stared at her in surprise. He had expected her to return to her people, to complete her mission and leave him behind. But now she was asking for something different. She was asking him to be a part of her future. I thought you had made up your mind, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought you were going to go back. I was, Elira said, her voice faltering. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I can't leave behind the one person who has shown me what true warmth means. I can't abandon the connection we have, not after everything we've shared. Jack felt a wave of emotion flood through him. His heart pounded in his chest, and he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Elira had come to the station to complete a mission, but now she was choosing him. She was choosing their bond over her duty, over everything she had been taught to believe. But Elira, Jack began, his voice thick with emotion, your people need you. You have a responsibility to them. I know, Elira said softly, stepping closer to him. But I've learned that the people who truly need me are the ones I care about. I can't do this alone. I don't want to be alone anymore. Not when I've found something worth fighting for. Jack's heart swelled, with both joy and fear. He had always known that their connection was something special, but hearing Elira say those words made everything feel real. She was choosing him, choosing a future that wasn't just about survival, but about love, about companionship. Elira, Jack said, his voice steady now. If you stay, if you choose me, we're in this together. Whatever happens, we'll face it as one. Elira smiled, her face softening. That's all I need, Jack. I need you with me, not just for warmth, but because you've shown me what it means to be human. I don't know if I can ever repay you for what you've given me, but I promise I'll try. Jack reached out and took her hand, pulling her closer to him. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he was ready to face it with someone by his side. I don't need repayment, Elira, Jack said, his voice filled with sincerity. I just need you. And in that moment, as they stood together in the hangar, it was clear that no matter where their journey took them, they would face it together. The future was uncertain, but their connection was undeniable. They had found something rare in each other, a bond that went beyond species, beyond duty, beyond everything they had known before. With one final glance at the stars outside, Elira turned back to Jack, a look of determination in her eyes. Let's go, she said. Together. And as Jack followed her toward the shuttle, he knew that this was just the beginning of their new life, a life full of uncertainty, but also full of hope, warmth, and the promise of a future they would create together.